Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest was born in Rhode Island and is of French-Canadian descent, and he is the author of the Old Grandmother's Tree series of illustrated folklore books. His name is Joseph Bolton, and my interview with Joseph will follow the note-taking sounds. Joseph Bolton, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here this morning.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay. My name is Joseph Bolton. I'm the author of a brand new book series called Old Grandmother's Tree. It's a collection of original folk tales and written by me and illustrated by Natasha Pelly-Smith out of Toronto. And this book is a kind of a retelling of my Algonquin and Quebec ancestors, except in a reimagined Quebec with magic and Native American inspired trickster characters. I am French-Canadian on my mom's side. I am also a 25-year Army veteran, served in Afghanistan, work as a project manager, but my real passion, of course, is this book series.
Now, you served in the U.S. Army, not the Canadian Army. I'm just asking that for clarification.
Yes, I served in the U.S. Army. However, when I was in Afghanistan, I was very good friends with the Canadian detachment that was there serving with me out in Afghanistan. And in fact, the official historian in the Ministry of Defense who was writing the history of the Canadian Army in Afghanistan has a very small blurb with me because of support that I actually rendered, a small service I rendered to the Canadian Army while I was in Afghanistan. So Canada is very dear to my heart, and certainly the Canadian military is very dear to my heart.
Without spoiling too much of the Old Grandmother's Tree books, of which there are currently 2 volumes out now, what are the common themes of those books, and how many folk tales are in each one?
Well, there's 5 stories in each book, and although there's 2 right now, there is a 3rd one that is in production. It's being illustrated, so I expect to have that one out in September. And book 4, which will be out probably early next year, but both those books are written. They're just in the process of being illustrated for production. But yes, there's 5 stories in each one. They're various lengths. 2 of the stories actually have no text at all. Some have, like one story has 8,000 words of text. So it kind of varies. But these stories are all linked together, and they can be read in any order that you wish. They'll stand alone, but they also together tell a much, a bigger story.
Natasha Pelly-Smith is the illustrator of the Old Grandmother's Tree books, as you've mentioned earlier in the interview. What is it like to work with Natasha on your books?
Oh, it was an incredible experience, and actually, we met. She was the first person I actually Googled and found for an artist. I was looking for an illustrator. I preferred an illustrator from Canada because these stories were set in Canada, have very much a Canadian feel, and I wanted that cultural context. And she was the first name that popped up. But working with her has been an incredible experience. We have this very good connection. She understands the stories, and we have a shared vision. So much so that when I actually write the stories, I can visualize how she is going to illustrate it. And it comes out to be really close. Natasha is very imaginative, creative. She puts wonderful details in her illustrations. And we work together very well. And we're going to be working together on these next 2 books as well.
What makes your books of folk tales different from other books of folk tales?
Well, for one thing, they're original, because it's almost an oxymoron when I say original folk tales, because folk tales, almost by definition, are stories that are very old and are part of a much larger cultural context And some of them, many of them are hundreds of years old or thousands of years old. But the way I look at why I say original folk tales is because these stories were written in the language of a folk tale, is the way I describe it, with the trickster animal characters, a little bit of a magical setting. Stories themselves have a bit of a lesson in them, very much like a folk tale. So when you read the stories within Old Grandmother's Tree, it'll feel familiar to you. Why? Because we're all familiar with the idea of a folk tale, and folk tales have a universal appeal. So it's in the style of a folk tale, but they are original stories, 100% original stories, except the fact that I took the real history of my ancestors and kind of overlaid it on top of this folklore world.
How do you incorporate Native American folklore into your stories?
Well, the characters themselves that are original. Almost all of them are original, but they are heavily inspired by trickster animal characters, and it's not just Native American trickster characters, but just the whole concept of trickster characters, which are very common in mythology and folktales. It's a staple, and even today, we have the trickster character is ubiquitous in literature and film and television. And today, a good example of a trickster character is Bugs Bunny. He gets himself in trouble. He gets other people around them in trouble in kind of a good-natured way, and that's kind of like what these trickster characters are like. They resemble Native American trickster characters in that their animal spirit of what they are is based on animals that are native to North America and Canada in particular. The bear, the moose, the turtle, the raccoon. They resemble that, and also the names are also taken from Native American culture. But the personalities that I gave these characters are all original. So it's kind of like you could almost use the word fan fiction, create based on inspired by Native Americans. So when you read that again, you'll say it feels like original Native American story, but it actually isn't. But it very much will resemble it in the way that it'll feel to you as a reader.
Did you base some of your trickster animal characters on real life people you know or knew?
Well, I would say there's two characters in particular that really stand out on that. One is Mewan the bear and his brother Azaban the raccoon. They're brothers and they get in trouble together as brothers. And I base some of their antics, include especially like pie stealing and cake stealing, on myself and my brother David. When we were kids, we would get into trouble quite often, and so Mewan and the bear and Azaban the raccoon are based on myself and my brother. The other character I think that is kind of an amalgamation of people that I know would be Uncle McKeish. And Uncle McKeish is a real linchpin character for the stories. He is a turtle. He's very ancient. He's very wise, but he's small and he's a turtle. And he's not as powerful all the time as he thinks he is. And there's one scene in the second volume. I think I remember the page is 129, but the chapter is called "The Walk Back to Mount Orford." And in that chapter, Uncle McKeish is riding the back of his nephew Poku the moose as they walk back to their home on Mount Orford near Lake Memphremagog in Quebec. And as they're talking, Uncle McKeish is being very complaining. He says, I can't do all the things I thought I could do. I can't roll the lumberjack off the log, and I wasn't able to throw the axe in the axe throwing contest in the village. And his nephew is saying, well, you're a turtle. You're not supposed to be able to do all those things. And finally, Uncle McKeish says, nephew, you must already tire of me because I repeat all my stories. And his nephew, Poco the moose, says, no, uncle, says, I enjoy all your stories all the time because with every retelling of your stories, I learn something new. So those two characters, I'm actually both those characters in that story. Some because as an older adult, I have nephews and nieces that are like 30 years old. So sometimes I feel like I'm Uncle McKeish. Other times I'm like Poku, the moose, because I, in turn, also have uncles and aunts who are very aged and they need a little extra care and attention and patience. And so that whole dialogue represents almost a talk with myself about that relationship that nephews and nieces have with their uncles and aunts.
What motivated you to write the Old Grandmother's Tree books?
Well, it was to honor my mother's Quebecois heritage, as well as honor in particular Mitio Goku, my Algonquin ancestor, who lived in Trois-Rivières in the 17th century. Um, she is, in fact, the old grandmother of the Old Grandmother book series, and her life. Interesting enough, by great, wonderful coincidence, her life was very well documented by the Jesuit priests of Trois-Rivières. And she has a very remarkable story. When she was a young woman, about 22 years old, she was married to another Algonquin man. They had two small children. The Mohawks came up in 1652 and raided Trois-Rivières. And her husband was killed, and her two small children were kidnapped, and she never saw them again. And 5 years later, she married a French settler named Pierre Cauc, and together they became my ancestors. And, she never lived a life of bitterness, and she built something wonderful in life, even though it started off with incredible tragedy. And when she died in 1699, and she was 68 at the time, a day after she passed away, the parish priest up in Trois-Rivières wrote of her, and this is what he said, and I quote, Mitio Goku lived a full life with dignity, respect, and love, a courageous and loving Algonquin woman, end quote. And that to me was such an inspiring and beautiful, but it's like, to me, it's the most effective and beautiful eulogy you could write in 2 sentences, I think, for anyone. And any person would have done well in their life if someone could actually say, with all sincerity, that person who passed away lived a life of dignity, respect, courage, and love. And so, using that statement from Father Cray when he wrote that, I developed the story about Mitio Goku and how she married Pierre Cauc. And the first two stories of this book only refer indirectly to the attack. The fourth book that's coming, it's being produced right now, will actually dive a lot more details into the attack itself and the immediate aftermath of the attack. And that book will take place at the end of Mitio Goku's life, as she's trying to explain her life and her culture, Algonquin culture, to her French Algonquin granddaughter, also my ancestor. So it really was to honor the French Canadian culture as a whole, but I think Mitio Goku in particular.
Are the Old Grandmother's Tree books independently, traditionally, or hybrid published?
They're self-published on Amazon through Amazon KDP. And there's although it's harder to do for distribution, there are certain advantages I have to doing that because I have full control over the production of the books, how they're written, how they're put together, and how they look. But I would say these books are very are professionally produced. The books are edited and produced in Canada, in Montreal in particular. They're the ones that actually put together the books for me. They did the editorial service. They also supported the translation from French into Quebecois style French. The books are available in French as well. And so these books, although they are quote unquote self-published, they're very professionally produced. So what does that mean for the future? Is it possible that these books could be picked up by a larger distribution publishing house? That's possible, but that also comes with disadvantages. But I would say my real hope for these books, especially after I get the fourth book done, and that's produced early next year, is this book is ready-made for an animated series. And I would love to see this produced as either a live action limited series or a limited series animated series. And my heart would love to see it produced in Canada by Canadians because it's part of their story as well.
One final question. What is the best advice you could offer to anyone who is considering writing a book for the first time?
Well, the first thing you need to do is set your expectations. Are you writing a little book that you want to just get on Amazon and be happy with it, and that's your only expectation? Well, that's fine. You can do that all yourself. You do not need professional services to produce a book. It can be done by the author itself. However, if you are looking at what you're trying to do and you want to produce a professional product, a professional book, that takes time and it takes money as well. Thousands of hours, thousands of dollars if you want to do it right. So I think the very first thing is decide what you want to produce. And how much effort you want to put into it. But having said that, writing is such a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And I encourage everyone, even if you're not ready yet to produce a book, but to write. And I would also encourage you to seek out writers group. Most libraries, or at least one library in a region, will have a writers group that'll get together, and you can work with other writers. They can evaluate your book. And I think writing and the art of putting words onto a page is very therapeutic, but write from your heart as well.
Joseph, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You were an amazing and fascinating guest.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Joseph was a fascinating guest to interview, and he brought an interesting perspective to this podcast. Since the interview was recorded, the third book in the Old Grandmother's Tree series has been released, and I will include relevant links in the text description of this episode. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.